Okay, just making sure, because otherwise that'd be rather awkward if it's not there.
No, we're recording. This is a big
Oh.
budget production, Ben.
Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and hit record on my end and start the show. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
All right. Welcome to Azeroth Roundtable, episode 353. My name is Ben Bumhofer. It is an episode not about WoW again. So, skip it if you don't want to hear us. But if you do want to hear us, let me introduce someone who has an incredible voice, someone who is full of knowledge, someone who I love to call friend, and that's John Jagger. Hey, John.
Tulululu, tulululu.
And he does amazing mouth flute sounds.
Hi, Ben. Hey, we're here. We're gonna do another Star Wars episode because
We ran out of time.
we talked a lot last week about a movie, and now we're gonna talk about a show.
Yeah. It's slightly different because this is a show,
Right.
and it's broken into 8 parts.
If there's one thing I've learned, TV shows are not movies, and movies are not TV shows.
Yes, unless it's a made-for-TV movie, and then it's kind of a mix in the middle.
Yeah. Ben, we're gonna talk about The Mandalorian.
Yes, holy crap, it's The Mandalorian!
We've actually had a lot of people ask us our thoughts about The Mandalorian. It was even in our Q&A episodes that we did not too long ago. It was one of the frequently requested things, and we didn't answer it during those because we knew we would want to talk about it a lot. Because,
Yeah.
Ben, we have a lot of thoughts about The Mandalorian, as it turns out.
Yes. So first of all, this is going to be an entirely different episode than last week's, which was about The Rise of Skywalker, which, love it or hate it, a lot of people are talking about it in some form or another.
People are definitely talking.
Yes.
And
Yes.
tweeting.
Yes. And talking about it to us about how some people didn't like the episode, but some people thought we were spot on.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did it feel like we were unified? I didn't see any of the comments. Anyway, that's fine.
It doesn't matter. We'll talk about it later.
Okay, yeah,
But
that's a good point.
yeah, mainly because I don't want anything that we said last week to be brought into this discussion, because this is something entirely different.
Something totally
And
different.
I gotta say, I am glad that it's something entirely different because, so just kind of a little bit aside, if you haven't seen me in person, this is gonna sound really
That's
weird.
a lot of people probably
Yeah,
that are
okay.
listening.
Okay, so if you haven't seen me in person while I'm wearing shorts and look down
Wow, this
at
is
my leg
and
while looking at me from
nope,
behind.
This It's
Um,
funny the way you've decided to construct this setup. You could have probably done this a different way, but you've come this
no,
far.
I'm going a different way now.
Just
Going different.
finish
Okay.
it.
So, hey, John, a lot of people probably don't know that I have a Mandalore tattoo on my leg.
Oh, cool. You must be a fan of Mandalorians.
I am, actually. So one of the big things is if you're not super familiar with the Disney buyout or with random changes that happened in canon and things like that, there's a book series. It started off called Republic Commando, and it was essentially a book tie-in for a video game that came out, which is still one of my favorite Star Wars games. That one was absolutely amazing. First-person shooter, had nothing to do with Jedi. It was different and cool. But the book actually was pretty darn good. It's written by an author named Karen Travis, who she wrote some pretty good stuff. And then she wrote a sequel that, continued on with the story and really grew the whole Mandalorian culture. And in that, it's something that I totally fell in love with. I thought that it was a great, unique story. It's something that I loved. So much so that I got a Mandalore tattoo, which is the mythosaur skull. And in Mandoa, I wrote just around it, no job is too big. Kind of like a personal, hey, you can do it to myself on top of, just this really cool thing. It's like, hey, I'm going to put my mind to it. I'm going to do it. This is awesome. And then Clone Wars happened and kind of changed some of that storyline to the point where the storyline that was going in the books, it was 4 or 5 books, 6 books long, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of got turned on its head. The culture changed, and then, like the ending that we were looking for, it was going to be like one more book. It just kind of got scrapped because Clone Wars changed the whole thing. And that was the first time where I was like, "Oh, I hate this. This is the dumbest thing in the world." And then once I accepted it, I came to the frame of mind of where you are, of basically, yeah, Star Wars is a thing. There's always going to be stuff going on, and there's going to be stuff I like. There's going to be stuff I don't like. I'm just going to enjoy what I can. That being said,
So the Mandalorian, though.
yeah, the Mandalorian, the aspects and the culture and everything that was in those books, I thought it'll be really cool if they're able to, bring some of that back and put it into the series. This was all before everything. And I would just like to say that I freaking love the Mandalorian and the culture and everything that's represented in this series, because it has a lot of ties to what was in those books, and it's just amazing. It's something that's different from Star Wars. It's not, just Jedi fighting all the time. And we see, different aspects of the politics. We see different aspects of the universe, and it's like, below the Jedi Sith fighting and battling and stuff like that. It's like more of that lived in world that a lot of people fell in love with in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And that's the cat.
Oh, well, there was a cat in The Mandalorian.
Yes, a loth cat.
I managed to save that and steer it right back to where it needed to be.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, you were just about to jump in and talk about stuff.
Hey, so Mandalorian, I've been one of those people that have had the, I guess maybe unfortunate positions of, being easily won over by characters like Boba Fett. Super cool character. When you think about what Boba Fett did, the lines, the actual lore behind as he's presented in the mythology, not actually a character deserving the praise, attention, and adoration that he gets. And that's just the reality. But you know what? He looks freaking cool. And so I've always been a big Boba Fett fan. And, that's a statement that holds up as far as, yeah, but why? And then it's like, shut up. That's about as good as you can get. And so
the why is essentially like Chuck Norris jokes.
Yeah, the Y is kind of like Chuck Norris jokes because he is Sarlacc. So it was really intriguing to me to finally see something, because we've always heard talk about, oh, they might do a Boba Fett movie, or they might do this, or, oh, there's going to be a game that's going to expand the lore of Boba Fett, or, something to that effect. It's always been a thing that could potentially come up, that could be a part of something, and it never happened. It never really got off the ground. There were a couple times where they, danced around it here and there. There are some games. There have been expansions to his lore. It's not like every time they've ever tried it has failed. But generally speaking, there's still not a whole lot to really love about the character. And so somebody coming in and finally saying, hey, we're going to do a story. It's going to focus on this character, the Mandalorian. It's going to take place in what I think is a really interesting time in the chronology, because I get a little sick of the more traditional places where they set these things. It's very common for stuff to be set between episode 3 and episode 4. It's very common for things to be set, during the Galactic War or in the Old Republic or all over the place. There's a lot of places they set things.
Yeah. Or like right before Force Awakens. Like it's like just they're like the little feeding fish around sharks around the new trilogy.
Yeah, so diving into the area between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is kind of uncharted territory, and I feel like it was done that way intentionally so, because I think everybody wanted to get out of the way of the movies, like let the movies do what they needed to do, and so let's not do anything lore-wise that's really gonna, cause issues or create problems. But this is a very cool area to explore and to deal with. And so it also, from the moment they showed the trailer, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's going to be got this kind of Western feel, and There's a lot of throwbacks to friggin' Boba Fett in the holiday special, which is a weird thing to
I
acknowledge,
know.
but there it is. And I was just really excited for it. And I watched that first episode. I guess we'll finally get to the episodes here. So I watched chapter 1 and I liked it. I didn't love it, but
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this wasn't bad. And I'm very intrigued about where it's going to go. And so I was pretty stoked.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier that something like this exists.
Well, and I think the thing that it has, like one of the biggest strengths that it has going for it is the fact that it's not Boba Fett. It's not Jango Fett. It's neither of them. It happens to be just a Mandalorian who you know nothing about in the first episode. He's just kind of there doing his thing.
Yeah, and it just starts. There's not a lot of setup, there's not a lot of backstory. There's honestly a shocking lack of talking.
Yeah.
Um it's a really interesting series, and so I don't know, do you want to just do a quick like our thoughts on the episodes and then we can do overall? Do you want to do overall and then episodes? How do you want to approach
I don't know.
this?
Do you want? I guess let's go just kind of episode by episode and just kind of chat about it because I want to make sure we can hit some of our favorite bits or things that we thought worked really well in each of the episodes, and not run out of time.
Okay, so chapter 1, The Mandalorian, directed by
The
Dave
Mandalorian.
Filoni, who did the Clone Wars, and he's basically been, if it's been an animated Star Wars thing, he's had his
He's been involved.
fingers all over it. Written by Jon Favreau.
Which, by the way, the whole series created by Jon Favreau.
Yeah, he likes Mandalorians, as it turns out.
Yeah, thank God.
So what was your takeaway from watching that first episode?
Well, the thing that I really thought was the best part of it is the fact that, okay, so he goes into this bar, like, first scene, right? And just destroys these guys. And you're like, okay, he's pretty badass. This is cool. I'm really happy about this. And then you find out that he's not the super duper best guy at doing everything in the world. Like, yeah, he does a good job at stuff, but when he lands on the whatever the planet is where he actually ends up finding his bounty and gets attacked by an animal, he just like he nearly dies if Quill wasn't there to save him. And I like that like right out of the gate it's like, oh, this guy's awesome. Oh no, he has flaws, and he like there's actual danger in all this.
Yeah, it sets up a much more human level character. This isn't a Jedi who we typically follow. This isn't someone, it's got that weird power scaling that you sometimes see where it's kind of an interesting thing, and I don't want to go too far off the path of what we're talking about, but
That's fine.
Star Wars, the main chapters, I feel like, is always framed through the Jedi. Like, they're a focal point, and they're your balance point. And as a result, everything is very big and very bombastic, and, you see what they can do and all that, but it's presented as normal because it's almost from their perspective. And there was a thing that I really liked going back to the Republic Commando video game. So that video game, one of the things that I thought was really cool about it was that game changed the Star Wars universe to not reflect how a Jedi would look at the universe, but to reflect how a single clone trooper would look at that universe. In that, yes, you're all clones, you should all have the same voice, but they got different voice actors to do the voices of the other clones because you are able to tell them apart. They do have a personality to you. The Trandoshans show up in that game, and they look monstrous and terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's not how you see, like, Bosk in the movie where he's just like a little lizard just... Like, it's not that. It's like this hideous, awful thing that's going to tear you apart because you're not a Jedi that would just dispatch it with a flick of the wrist. you're
Hmm.
something that would actually be hunted by these things. You know, Wookiees are towering and droids are scary, and it's really it's a really interesting perspective, and I kind of feel like the Mandalorian does that too, in that okay, we're not looking at this world through the eyes of a Jedi. We're looking at the world through someone who is very skilled and is very dangerous, but very skilled and very dangerous in the Star Wars universe doesn't mean squat against a lot of things.
Hmm. Exactly. And the thing is too is that it kind of translates also when he ends up getting to the compound and he's kind of going in as IG-11's just destroying everybody. So he runs in and he starts attacking too, but like within the first like couple dudes, they get him on the ground, but like he's skilled enough that he's able to still defend and take care of himself. Like he's kind of Batman in that sense. If Batman gets knocked down and hit a lot more than Batman does.
Yeah. So I think the things that really worked for me in this episode was obviously Queel is a breakaway character. We're going to
Hmm.
talk about him every time he shows up because
He's so good.
he's really good. It took me 2 viewings before I even realized he was supposed to be an Ugnaught. It took a while. And like that was the end of it. Ugnaughts went from something I cared none about to like I freaking love Ugnaughts. Queel's great.
Yeah, I didn't know that until someone said the Ugnaught. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so he's amazing. Uh, we have to talk about IG-11. We're going to talk about him more.
Yes.
I think he got built up a little bit. I certainly didn't come out of episode 1 going, IG-11 is the best. I enjoyed his time on screen.
Hmm.
But for a while, it seemed like they were almost going to present the series as like almost like buddy cop with IG-11 and the Mandalorian. And we did not get that at all. IG-11
No.
shows up, he's in a couple scenes, and then he gets shot in the head by the Mandalorian.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's funny. All the promo, everything about it is that I essentially thought that it was going to be more of like a Firefly sort of situation where yeah, they're a bunch of bounty hunters together doing jobs. Not at all,
Yeah.
which I'm again really happy about.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
that's probably for the best because there's a lot of things with bounty hunters where it's just, we're going to just follow jobs of bounty hunters. And
mhm,
while I will always be okay with that because that is a trope that I enjoy very, very much, there was something very welcoming about the fact that, like, this decided to go a different way.
exactly. So to just kind of tie up my thoughts on chapter one, the I mean, it was a great intro to the whole series. Again, great intro to a lot of the characters and stuff. It had a decent bit of storytelling, but it was visual storytelling as opposed to being thrown exposition and everything. Like you learned bits about the Mandalorian, about his character. You learned a little bit about the culture when he got hit that one piece of Beskar. It gave you little hints here and there about oh, something happened in the past and the stuff's going on. And like the action scenes and stuff worked really well. I thought it was pretty cool, and just overall, like I started really liking the character a whole bunch, and I like it totally caught me like full hook, line, sinker, whatever you want to call it. From that first episode, I was hooked. I thought it
Yeah,
was just absolutely great.
it took me 2 viewings. I was so excited for the series. I was up at like midnight watching it, and I was tired. And so there was definitely a like urgency in my need to see it, but I don't think I appreciated it until I watched it the second time and was
Hmm.
like, oh, I really like this. Gotta give a shout out to Werner Herzog for being
Oh yes.
incredible as always. Just dude is great. Uh,
Everything he's in, and apparently he hasn't seen any Star Wars, and he's like, I don't need to see it.
He didn't. He did great.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody did a really good job in this. It was a side of the Star Wars universe that, we knew existed, and I just always wanted to see more of. And it did that. And the only other thing I want to say, even though it can apply to all of these episodes, but one thing I really have to give the show kudos for, it looks like Star Wars. I don't know if that's just the fact that it is a TV show, and so the lower budget plays in its favor, but like, you could watch The Mandalorian following the original trilogy and not bat an eye, in my opinion.
Exactly.
It looks like it belongs side by side with those things. It's amazing how well it matches the look and feel.
Well, not only just the looks, like just the subtlety of the sound design and everything as well. It is right in there. I've seen the first episode 3 or 4 times now, something like that. I don't know. Like, this isn't me bragging. It's just based on different viewings, you know, whether it's been like just on the TV or with headphones or anything like that. Like, if you have a decent pair of headphones and listen to this stuff, there's so many different like familiar Star Wars sound cues throughout the entire thing, and it's just fantastic and just like really brings you home.
Yeah.
And last but not least, something else that has to go with every episode is that the concept art at the end, underneath the credits, is all gorgeous as well.
Yeah. I just want it to be my desktop, all of them, all the time on my desktop.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that brings us to chapter 2, which is called The Child, directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Probably said that wrong, but I tried. And once again, written by Jon Favreau. And so this is where we really, we saw him in the first episode, but this is where we really get into Baby Yoda. I don't think people are still being quite as dickish about it as they were in the early days of the show, but just for full discrepancy, we know that it is not actually Baby Yoda. We have not been given a Yoda race or species, and we have not given this child a name. He's just referred to as the child, and I prefer to say Baby Yoda. So that is what we are going to call him. Please do not send a correction to Ben and I. We know this is not Yoda as a baby. Although
also, preempting another possible correction, any description of Yoda's race before Disney took over is non-canon and actually has never been fully confirmed.
Wouldn't it be funny if it was like a reincarnated Yoda? So it actually was Baby Yoda. I don't think that works because Yoda's ghost is hanging out doing stuff, lighting trees on fire and whatnot. But
yeah,
just to really just like stick it to everybody that was like, it's not Yoda. We know. Most of the people know. Not all the people, but most of the people know it's not Yoda.
Yeah. Overall, though, I don't care. I'll call him Baby Yoda just so that people know who I'm talking about. Because I can't go around saying, oh, you know what I love? The child. It's
yeah,
like, no, that's
now
just
you're on
sounding.
a list. Exactly. That's how lists get made.
Exactly. But yeah, so this is the first time that we really get to see the child and see what's going on with them and everything. And it's the most adorable thing on TV right now.
It really is, and I don't know why you're listening to our spoiler thing if you haven't actually watched this show, but a lot of people saw images of Baby Yoda, and I had a lot of this because I showed a couple people pictures of him, and they were like, ugh, what's that? And I was like, it's the cutest thing in the world, and they were like, mm-mm. But then they watched the show, and they're like, it's so adorable! It's honestly something that doesn't work great in even like GIF fashion. Like GIF is okay, but like in pictures and stuff, Baby Yoda doesn't quite. You have to see it. It's a full experience before you really appreciate how ridiculously cute this thing is. You have to get the full package because Baby Yoda is painfully cute. It actually hurts. I'm still convinced that in 9 months from now, a new generation of children will be born into this world that will be the Baby Yoda generation from people seeing it and going, maybe I do want a baby.
Well, fun fact, around Christmas time, There was some hospital that was just putting Yoda ears on all the babies.
Oh, it's adorable. See, this is what I'm talking about. So
Yeah,
there
exactly.
is going to be a Baby Yoda generation. Yeah, look at the birth rates 9 months from the Mandalorian. Let's
Exactly.
just see how much they skyrocket. So,
On top of that, I think one of the biggest things that makes it work as well as it is because he's practical. He's not CGI.
mm-hmm.
And that right there, like, I mean, just the interaction with everybody who experiences him in the entire series is fantastic and amazing. But it adds so much more just cuteness to it. Like you don't have a little bit of the uncanny valley with him because he's right there on screen. He was practical. He was real, and I think that that's the one of the best decisions that they made.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's not the only tiny thing running around in this episode. This
Oh
episode
no.
has a lot of Jawas. And it turns out I needed more Jawas in my Star Wars. Didn't
I
think I
know,
did.
right?
Not on the list of things I thought I was going to want to see more of. But then they put them in there, and I was like, man, I am glad we got some Jawas.
As soon as he walks, crests the hill, and then there's a sand crawler, I immediately said, well, nah, I don't care. I'm gonna swear. I immediately said, "Oh shit," because I know what Jawas do.
Yep. They found a
And
ship, they stripped it
did
for
it.
parts, and then he started disintegrating Jawas.
Which, of course, everyone's all. That's why Darth Vader told Boba Fett no disintegrations.
Sure,
Yeah, okay,
that can be a part of it, but yeah, why not?
but yeah, and I love the fact that so his gun slash baton slash stun stick, whatever. I love that it's not super OP. That it's like like a rifle of okay, I need to reload a cartridge every time I'm gonna disintegrate a fool.
Yeah. Yeah, because if he could just rapid fire disintegrate, that's too much.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. But it's got to
It,
be big and bulky and problematic.
exactly. One of my, and this is so stupid, but one of my favorite things that happened as I was watching this episode was like, don't you just love it when you're watching something and then you ask a question and then the episode kind of feels like, hey, it's about time that we answer this question that everybody's going to ask and then answers it like right there.
And
And
what was that?
that was, what's going on with Baby Yoda while he's running after the sandcrawler?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
just following right behind.
It's just zipping along. And, again, this is another example of, for as badass as this character is, disintegrating Jawas, blasting Jawas, going after their sandcrawler, action movie style, he loses. He loses to a bunch of Jawas. There's just too many of them. They're waiting in ambush when he climbs up on the top. They zap him off the top of the damn thing. And he loses to the Jawas, which is
big
great.
time. Yeah, and then so of course he has to go back to Quill to get his stuff back.
Yeah, and this leads to one of my favorite little negotiations where he nearly tries to just burn one alive while they're talking peaceably. Also, can I just say, like, as somebody who played a bounty hunter in Star Wars The Old Republic and was like, man, they're really leaning on this flamethrower, it's good to finally see a Mandalorian really lean on the flamethrower.
Yep.
Like, he uses that sucker a lot. He uses it so much it runs out at one point. Not in this episode, but...
Yeah.
Or actually, it would be in this episode, right? Because he uses
yeah.
every weapon he has against the Mudhorn.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, because he ends up pulling off that knife at the very end. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this.
We're down to the freaking knife. That's all we got.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny though because he does have all those weapons, and you're right. The flamethrower is great, and if you really think about it, like that is one of the best weapons you can use in the Star Wars universe. People aren't like, hey, fireproof. It's just it makes sense.
Well,
it's
not
something
all
to be scared
people.
of.
Some people seem to be fireproof, but we'll get to that in a couple episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, so chapter 2 was when I was convinced that I was going to just adore this series.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's funny because a lot of it comes down to making the Star Wars universe feel lived in and real again. Because, of course, Jawas are going to strip his ship. You know, it fit for me. It's you park in the middle of nowhere on a planet that's probably got scavengers because it's a, you know, crappy planet and stuff. And yeah,
That's
it
how you
happens.
get Jawas.
Yeah, exactly.
You want Jawas? That's how you get them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
I feel the
Oh,
same way.
yeah.
And I did think. Sorry, one last thing, and then I'm done, and you can say whatever you're trying to say. So much. One thing that I really liked was that as I watched it, and this episode, once again, another episode with very little talking, very little dialogue, just a lot of him doing stuff and not really explaining it. And I thought, okay, well, they've got Queel there that he can talk to. I thought they were going to do this with IG-11, give him a little chatterbox to talk to or to interact with who can explain situations. And I kept thinking, like, okay, he's a character that's silent, so surely at some point they're going to do the, you know, Chris Tucker to his Jackie Chan, or, you know, give him somebody who's going to talk and be able to, like, explain what's going on and all of that. And they do give him a partner. They give him a partner who can't talk. And I was like, wow, that's a really bold choice. They're not going to have somebody there to, you know, break it all down all the time. Like, they really are going to put two characters that just don't talk right next to each other, and that's going to be your duo.
Yeah, and it works really well. Part of that going back and forth is because I found it funny that we just kept talking.
Yeah.
But no, another thing too is that this is the episode where we learn that yeah, Baby Yoda is actually force sensitive.
Yeah, he's got
Like
it.
it's something that I wasn't sure if that was going to be a thing or not. I don't know if it's like just inherent to that race. Who knows? We don't know anything about it. Also, I forgot to mention that I still find it funny that he's 50 years old.
Yeah. I constantly remind myself that he's 50. Because it's a funny fact to remember. Also, using the Force makes you sleepy.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. He's like Molly from The Runaways.
Yep. That brings us to Chapter 3, The Sin, directed by Deborah Chow, and once again written by Jon Favreau. And Deborah Chow's an exciting director for a couple reasons. One, first female director for Star Wars live action. And two, she is going to be your director for Kenobi. So, Ben, are you going to tell me that this episode is good and I should be excited for Kenobi?
Well, John, let me clue you in on something here. This episode isn't good. This episode is fantastic.
Oh, man, look at that.
So I'm really looking forward to Kenobi. I forgot about that. Yeah, no, this oh my gosh, this is the episode right here that really, like, okay, I love the series already, but this one right here is just like, oh, it's going to be like this. It's going to constantly be like upping the ante and just giving so much more growth to this character and to the culture and to everything without really just blatantly throwing it out there and saying everything. Like, we learn more about the Mandalorian when he goes and gets his full Beskar armor, but we learn little bits and pieces, and it gives you just enough to kind of fill in the gaps and really learn a lot about the culture. Like, I love that some of the other Mandos there are like pissed off that he's got all this Beskar because, you know, it was taken by the Imperials. But then the blacksmith, she's just all like, no, it's back. It's cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. But, you know, there's still like this uneasiness there. And then by the end of the episode, that crap doesn't matter because they're all, you know, not exactly the same clan, but they're all the same culture and they've got each other's back. And
yeah,
I loved it.
It's that, you know, we all might fight with each other around the Thanksgiving Day table, but then if an outside force comes in and messes with us, well, now the whole family's united and going up against you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like, that's how it is. And yeah, this episode was really good. I don't know if I have much to say. I mean, it wraps up the kind of 3-part intro arc, because it really feels like the first 3 episodes of the show are kind of like a movie in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of like its own self-contained movie. And maybe an argument could have been made that it could have existed like that. But because it's actually short. Like,
Yeah.
that, honestly, my one complaint with this show is how short the show is in general.
Yeah,
Like,
episodes are like half hour to 40 minutes most of the time. It's weird how much storytelling they can do in that amount of time though.
it's true. I feel like there are a few episodes, and we're going to get into them because they're coming up next, that
Mhm.
could have benefited from maybe a more set runtime and maybe a longer one. Not that, I mean, because there's definitely an element of it doesn't overstay its welcome. You know, maybe if you're not a fan of a particular episode, at least it wasn't around so long that it really ruined everything for you. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I feel like when I think about some of the things I didn't like about certain episodes, one of the ways they could have gotten around that is if they had had a little more time to linger on some things rather than go, 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 because we have to get to
Yeah,
the end point quickly.
I can see that.
But anyway, that's future chapter stuff. Right now we're talking about the Sin.
Mhm.
Very, very cool just to see a bunch of Mandalorians show up and start wrecking.
Yes. Oh, and we never mentioned Carl Weathers is in this. And it's like that's a very familiar face. But hey, he fits in and it works and I really like him.
I really like him too. He's great in it. He's a little cheesy, but he's cheesy in a Star Wars way, and I like it. And it is very, it's very Carl Weathers. I
Yeah,
don't
it
know
works.
if it's Arrested Development just tapped into that properly.
I think it's part of that. Because I mean, that's where I go anytime it's Carl Weathers now. It's like I can't go anywhere else.
I just keep picturing every time the Mando sits down, he's just like,
Are you
There's
gonna eat that
still
sandwich?
there's still meat on that bone. You put that in a pot with some water, you got a stew going, baby. Like, that's just what I picture him doing every time he sits down. Except instead of baby, maybe you go Mando. Also, a lot of people say the word Mando in this show. Carl Weathers gets the award for best delivery of Mando. He says it with such gusto every single time that I wish I could be Carl Weathers just talking about this show, because every time he walks in, it's always, there he is, Mando! Like, he leans into it in such a big, glorious way that I love it.
It's pretty good. It is pretty good. So this is a really great episode for action. You see the Mando going in and being pretty smart with stuff that he does. He forms a plan. Parts of that plan go to hell, and he improvises and keeps moving. And I think that out of everything, this one kind of shows why he's as successful as he is. But in theory, he still loses at the end if the other Mandos didn't show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and he gets shot a lot.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about how much I appreciate armor that actually works? That
Oh, definitely.
Not since Captain Phasma have we seen Star Wars armor actually do a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's
Yeah.
so nice. It turns out all these dumb armored people are actually protected sometimes. And
Yeah.
not foiled by rocks or pointy sticks or arrows or, sure, blaster bolts, but that's what they'd be coming up against most of the time. Like, oh my gosh, it's so nice that some of these things actually deflect a laser blast. Who knew?
Yeah. And here's the thing too, something that I thought was really kind of cool is the fact that even when it wasn't the Beskar, his armor still protected him.
Yeah.
So it's not the plasteel stuff that the stormtroopers have. It's actually metal that works.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it worked out pretty well.
All right, that brings us to Chapter 4, Sanctuary, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard and written by Jon Favreau.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, so I think when I was kind of checking the internet's pulse on the show, this is the episode where it feels like a lot of people started to go, not that people fell off the show, because it felt like everybody was still in through all of it, but this one seemed to get a quieter response. But this is actually one of my favorite episodes.
I think it's really good too. I really do. Like, I mean, first of all, I don't think there's any real weak episodes, but
Oh, I do. but we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Um. Anyways, so...
Sorry, not to bring everybody down, but yeah, I think there's a stinker in there. But yeah, let's go on.
Okay. But like Sanctuary worked out really well, and it it built up Star Wars like kind of canon stuff. It's like, yeah, there's this giant civil war that happened. It's over. What's going on with some of the leftover, stuff? Whether it's we see like the stormtroopers and everything back on Navarro, or if it's at, I forget what this planet's called, if they even mention it. There's the random warlord crappy people there who are, they just randomly have an ATST. And I like how it's just kind of like, yeah, this stuff happens. And overall, like the Mando going and trying to find peace, trying to find a place to go, like not fully retiring or anything, but just finding a place to live, I thought was a really great story. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the quiet moments, and not to say that this episode was quiet. It actually took one of what I think is one of the lamer things that the Empire had as a weapon and makes it terrifying in a great way. Again, like leaning into that ATSTs are lame when you see little bears destroying them, but if they're filmed right from the right perspective, ATSTs are actually terrifying and dangerous. But yeah, I like quiet moments in storytelling. Like, I think there's something to be said about the big battles and struggles against evil and all the trials and tribulations, but to me, none of that is worthwhile if you don't have a moment where everybody comes home and sits down and enjoys the world that they fought for, or gets a moment to reflect on why they're fighting. Like, if you don't have that, you're missing, in my opinion, a key piece of the puzzle. Because you can do action, just boom, 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 we're going from one thing to another, but you have to know what they're trying to obtain. If you don't ever touch on that, then why does it matter?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, this is the perfect time for it too, because, he just took the child. He's getting out of there. He is trying to find a peaceful place. And this is the episode where you find out that, yeah, not everything's like following him. There's other stuff and conflict going on in the galaxy, no matter where you're going to go. And I like that aspect of it, as opposed to, oh, the entire story is just people hunting him.
Yeah, and this episode is... another criticism I saw is it is Seven Samurai, not quite with Seven Samurai, but it is Seven Samurai, or the Magnificent Seven, or a million other things, and some people have even pointed out, yes, that there is also a Clone Wars episode eerily similar to this. Yeah. But everybody does a riff on this story, and they do it because it's a good story. Like, there's a reason people reference Seven Samurai. There's a reason why that is classic storytelling, and that's because it's really good. It's the introduction of Cara Dune, who winds up being very important, and I actually really like that character a whole bunch. And it is the introduction of Omera, who I was sad to see did not show back up in the show. I hope she's going to be in season 2 because I like Omera. And there's definitely something there because that lady unloaded a shitload of blaster bolts directly at a bullseye, and something's up, Ben.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's like, that thing's definitely dead if she were trying to kill something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is her backstory?
Yeah.
I love it. Why is she just a random simple farmer with a kid now?
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Clearly
stuff.
drawn to danger, trying to get under the Mandalorian's helmet there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like literally and figuratively.
So... yeah, I really liked this episode. It made me really like that planet. It made me really just enjoy the Star Wars universe, a more peaceful side of the Star Wars universe, which is not often seen, and it felt like something completely new, and I think that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So basically, this I'm guessing that this would be the episode where you kind of wish that it was longer to kind of fill out more, so that we didn't have like a super duper quick montage of them training the farmers.
No, I'm totally okay with how long this one is.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay, yeah,
I
good
mean,
episode.
I would have spent longer there, but you know.
Yeah,
And there was a moment where I thought they killed Baby Yoda, and I was like, "Oh, them's gonna be
Yeah.
problems because I'm not gonna be happy with that."
you know, I will say, with all the cute noises and stuff that he makes, when he starts talking, it's gonna ruin the illusion.
It's true when they go from Baby Groot to Teenage Groot with Yoda here, Baby Yoda. It's gonna be a problem. I don't know if I'm ready to hear him talk.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe it'll be another 50 years before that happens, and then we'll be
Maybe.
fine.
Maybe ever. I guess somebody did the. No, it's not worth talking about. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's go to chapter 5, The Gunslinger. Directed by Dave Filoni, written by Dave Filoni. This was definitely the nostalgia episode.
Yeah, this was the hey, so I heard you like Star Wars, so I put some Star Wars in your Star Wars.
Yeah, and that was, I don't mind it. At some point going back to Tatooine and seeing the things that we see, was good, and I was glad for it, and I didn't care that there was an element of like Star Wars' greatest hits all starred on Tatooine. Like, I just didn't mind it that much. The only reason that I think I had a problem with it at first, because I've seen most of these episodes at least twice.
Okay.
On first viewing, almost across the board, my first viewing, I like the episode less than my second. I don't know why. But in this one, I think there was a jarring element of, because it had been so disconnected from the things we knew, that all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is a lot. This is a lot of things that we've seen in places we've been. And that was really jarring. But I think when I got to see it a second time, I enjoyed the things that were there. It also made Luke and a lot of the people of Tatooine look like real dicks by just like, here's sand people, and he's just like, no, you just got to negotiate with them. You just got to talk to them and not treat them like animals.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, oh man.
But then think about what he did with the Jawas. So you gotta love that.
He has definitely a double standard. He's like, yeah, I'm definitely a sand people person, not a Jawa person.
I mean, do you kind of blame him though?
No, Jawas suck.
Yeah.
Like, they basically, as soon as you leave something unattended, take it from you and then say, like, well, you want to pay us for it? Like, that's awful. But this episode, I also liked, I liked most of the episodes, but I think this is the first one where I thought this could have benefited from a little bit more.
Okay.
I thought that the assassin that they were going after, I thought she was really cool. I would have liked to have seen more of her.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that could have been drawn out a little bit more. I thought the mechanic was kind of interesting, but
I thought she was really cool.
But
really cool.
I didn't think we got to see very much of her, and so a lot of it just felt a little too quick. And because it felt a little too quick, it felt like people had to kind of be less complicated. So when we meet Toro Calican, who's your
Bounty Hunter Junior.
bounty hunter, Indiana Jones, pirate, Han Solo-esque figure, and he shows up, like, he sucks, right? Like, right away, because they know they don't have enough time to convince you that he's gonna suck later.
Yeah. Well, as soon as he says, I'll give you the whole pay, it's like, oh, yeah, he sucks.
Yeah, there's gonna be a problem. Like, they do try to make you like him a little bit, but I don't know. He also sounded eerily like Hayden Christensen when he talked. Like, this is
I can kind of hear that.
this is
little
a
bit,
really
I
weird
guess.
thing, but every time he talked, I was like, Annie, is that you? So, I don't know. It was a weird thing. That's an odd hang up, but it was something that stood out in my mind.
Just a little.
I don't know. Go back and watch that episode and just think of him as Anakin, and you can totally, it's believable.
I'll have to, I guess. Yeah. Um, some of the neat things on this is, again, the knowledge that Mando has is pretty great. You know, using those flares to stop the sight from working, knowing what kind of range is safe for him to get shot by that sort of rifle and stuff. I thought it was pretty great. The plan totally fell apart, and then he was able to ad lib and get it to work from that point on. And like there was a lot in there that I thought was really neat. That was character building for him, and backed up a lot of stuff that we had seen in previous episodes.
Yeah, and
one thing that I do want to say really quick though is the growth of Tatooine from the original trilogy. I thought was neat. Like the picture for it, like on Disney Plus, is the stormtrooper helmets on sticks, on stakes, just kind of planted around and everything. And I think that was actually kind of a really cool touch. That was basically, hey, this planet is saying, yeah, the Empire's gotten everything, but we're gonna mess you up.
yeah, it's a lot of like cool world building and storytelling through setting that I really liked. This was an episode, again, I definitely enjoyed it more the second time, but that is a big part because my first viewing experience was I was sick the day this came out, and I watched it on an iPad in a bathroom as I was just in there not feeling very good. And
Yeah,
it didn't have the best lighting, and it's not the best way to enjoy the episode. And as a result, I watched this episode and freaked out when we got to the end of this episode and went online and was like, hey, y'all are going to want to stay off of Twitter because let me tell you, there's some crazy stuff in this episode.
Yeah, I saw that tweet and I stayed off of Twitter and I'm like, what's he talking about?
Well, let's talk about it because I am convinced that Boba Fett was in this episode. At the end of this episode, there is a scene where a figure, you don't see much of him, you basically see feet and a cape, not the same cape as Boba Fett, worth mentioning, but feet and a cape, walks towards the body of the assassin. And you do hear spurs. There is only one character in Star Wars that makes spur sounds when they walk. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think there's two. And I think in Clone Wars, I don't know how much you've watched of that, but doesn't the guy with the wide-brimmed hat, what's his name?
Cad Bane?
Doesn't he have spur sounds when he walks?
I think so. It's been a while since I watched that.
I just realized that Cad Bane also makes spur sounds, but he doesn't have a cape either. So it's just
he's
as
in the desert. Maybe it's to protect from sand.
It's just as much Boba Fett as it is Cad Bane. Anyway, spur sounds is associated with Boba Fett. It doesn't look like his armor. It doesn't look like his cape, but there's spur sounds, and there's a little like radio staticky kind of sound, which also seems like the sound in the one little like glimpse we get of Boba Fett in the special edition of A New Hope. It reminded me of that. There are two little audio nods to Boba Fett. I got excited because, again, I'm a Boba Fett fan for no reason. And I was very excited and freaking out. And then I watched it again in better lighting and was like, oh, I don't think that was Boba Fett. And then everybody was like, no, it's going to be Giancarlo Esposito's character. I'm sure it's going to be a different character. It's going to be somebody else. Well, the show's over and we never found out who it was. So...
Well, hey, there's a season 2, John.
It was not Giancarlo Esposito's character, so
No.
I am going to replant my Boba Fett flag because you don't tease it, and they knew what they were doing, Ben. You don't tease it if it isn't it. There's no reason to make people think it's Boba Fett if it's not. So I'm putting the flag down and I'm saying it's Boba Fett. He's on Tatooine. Okay. They already knew we were going to associate it with him. At this point, it would be just disappointing if it wasn't.
By the way, fun fact, I found out that George Lucas confirmed that Jango and Boba Fett are, in fact, not Mandalorian.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyways, overall, I very much enjoyed the episode. I love how that same flare trick was used to take out Bounty Hunter Jr. And overall, I'm very happy with it. Also, no, this isn't the episode with the with the Baby Yoda clicking stuff. That's in 4, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
that's 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
the memes from that and the edits for that are amazing.
It's so good. They put the Witcher song in there, and that was just like
Oh, I didn't hear that one.
double the memes at that point. So
See, my favorite one has been Africa. I thought that was great.
sure, it was good.
Yeah.
All right, Chapter 6, The Prisoner, directed by Rick Famuyiwa.
Okay.
Tried it again. Story by Christopher Yost. Teleplay by Christopher Yost and Rick Famuyiwa.
Okay.
Weird to the episode I don't like, Ben. It is officially...
I'm curious. I'm curious.
It is this one. I don't think this episode is good. And
really
that's
like this
actually
one.
really disappointing because Christopher Yost, as soon as I read the name, I was like, who's that? Creator of characters like X-23. He's done a lot of things I really like. He's a comic book writer. He's written a lot of really good stuff that I enjoy. This episode maybe would have worked better as a comic book. I was annoyed through most of this episode, but
Okay, fill in details because you might have missed me saying it, but I really like this episode.
yeah, my
This
parents,
is one of my favorites.
My parents called me and they were actually like, "Oh man, that episode, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, sorry, that one was bad." And they were like, "No, that's our favorite." I was like, "You guys are crazy." So this episode where we get our heist episode, which I'm so excited about because I just love a dumb reason for a bunch of people to get together and go do something.
Yeah, heist stuff is great, whether it's movies, episodes, whatever.
Even episodes of a TV show that make fun of heists is good because it's a heist and it's fun. Anyway, so this one, I didn't like the characters. Not in the sense of they did a good job of making me not like characters I shouldn't like, but in the sense of all the characters annoyed the shit out of me. And every time they were on the screen, I just wished they weren't on the screen.
Well, I will say that all of them were recognizable as their actual actor or actress. So I had issues with that part of it.
See, okay, I did not know who the Twi'lek lady was. And then I found out who it was, and I was like, really? But I love her, and she was so awful in this. It was so disappointing. It was like, I mean, it was exactly what it was. It was finding out an actress you really liked in a role you really hated. So
Yeah. So okay, so that's what it was. Like they just annoyed you, so you didn't like the episode?
yeah, didn't like it. I was just cringing through. I think the second half is pretty good.
When it turns into a horror movie?
Yeah, when he just starts wrecking them, then it's pretty good. I do like the fight where he finally turns on them. There's a great fight between him and Berg. I thought that was really good. But for the most part, with the exception of that, everything fell a little flat. The ending is good. The whole thing with the tracker. I do think it's weird that some X-Wings showed up and just decided, well, we're going to blow up this space station. Like
That is true. I don't know. I'm assuming that it's because they knew what the tracker was for. Like it was maybe assigned to that ship or something like that. But again, it still doesn't make sense to blow up the station when the ship could be on the station.
And I was like, well, maybe that station isn't as big as I thought. And then the second time I watched it, I'm just seeing a bunch
It's
of
huge.
innocent people walking around in the backgrounds, not doing anything. And I was like, oh yeah, they just show up and kill all these people.
Yeah. So, okay, let me tell you what I liked about it and why I liked it. To me, it was more character building for Mando. The idea is that he used to work with that crew. Look how horrible all of these people are. And he's like above that. potentially a better bounty hunter than they were. It showed him as kind of honorable. He wasn't paid to kill anybody. It was completely unmanned. So he tried to save that Republic officer's life. It's that's not what he was there to do. So he like kind of had a code. They didn't give a crap. Plus, the inevitable betrayal happened, which you knew was going to happen. Like, just didn't know how, especially when it found out that the dude that they were rescuing is the one that like he kind of put in there. It's like, okay, this is not good.
I mean, I knew it was going to happen because from the moment they meet him, the one guy's just constantly like, good old days, good old days, good old days. Like, I think he finds a way to mention the good old days about 5 times in the first 3 minutes that you met him. In fact, he even stops the show from progressing so that he can go, hey, just like the good old days, huh? And I like that actor too. Like, this is full of actors I like. Yeah. Actually, I like all of them now that I think about it. I don't know who the guy Twi'lek was, but with the exception of him, I know who all these actors are, and I like all of them. Even the little random Republic trooper is, speaking of the voice of Anakin from the Clone Wars cartoon. So I even like him. I like all these actors. The characters that they were, it was just the most stereotypical, like, we're tough guys, just testosterone filled the ship on the way, and it was just not good. The droid was okay.
Yeah, Zero was really cool.
He was fine, but sometimes when he was talking, it sounded like the narration to, like, a cop drama.
Okay, I can see that.
He was like, we're flying towards the station now. Their defenses are in place. And all I could flash back to was the criminals are on the run, but the patrol officers have got a trap set up ahead for them. Like, it was that kind of delivery, and it threw me. So,
yeah. Do you know who played him?
Yeah, the dude from the IT crowd.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just wasn't sure if you knew or not.
Oh yeah, I looked it up because I was like, "Who are these people?" Well, I knew who most of them were. You're right; they were fairly easy to tell.
Yeah, but like overall though, like the episode, I really liked it. I like how it worked. Again, it showed a plan going to hell, and then the Mando, improvising and being the only one who can actually like do the job.
Yeah,
and I liked it. It worked for me.
It got super good when it was a horror movie, though.
Oh yeah, that part was great.
So
first half worse or horrible. Second half pretty good.
Yeah, did not like the first half at all. Thought the second half was pretty good.
Okay.
Again, I didn't hate any of this. This is the one episode where if I was going through all the episodes with somebody, this is where I'd go, "Hey, you want anything to drink?" And I would get up and, maybe find some way to busy myself while the first part of this was on.
All right. Well, moving forward.
Yeah, Chapter 7, The Reckoning. This is directed by Deborah Chow, again, future director of Obi-Wan.
Hey, you know what? It's a great episode.
Written by Jon Favreau. And this is the return to the story from the beginning. We've had, a couple one-off episodes, and now we are getting back to the ramifications of the story. I am reading the Wikipedia description to keep all my facts in order, and I do not think this is true. The creatures that attacked them while they were by the campfire were Minox?
Minox live in space.
Those were not Minox. Those were little dragons. Like, it was not Minox. Minox looked like not. You stuck googly eyes next to like a cleaning loop.
Yeah, Minox suck on power cords and stuff. They don't eat people.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. So,
although because of their attack, the best line ever from Carl Weathers, "He's gonna eat me."
Grief Karga, which we have not taken a moment to appreciate his name. Grief Karga does not handle being injured well.
Well, and so what's even better is like 2 minutes beforehand, he says, "Oh, it eats meat. Who'd have thought?" or something like that.
He does not handle his injury well. He is not quiet. He is not composed. he is then terrified of everything, including Baby Yoda. He's gonna eat me.
Overall, though, so okay, episode. Mando gets an invite from Reef, and puts his own team together to do a thing, which of course he's gonna be backstabbed because of course it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But then he almost gets eaten by a dragon. So
Yeah.
hey, things turned out pretty well.
This episode, I saw this and I was like, holy shit, this show is gonna be awesome. Like, I was like, I just thought, man, I love this show. This is the best freaking episode of this show. It's so good. And it came out right before Rise of Skywalker, introduced us to the concept of the Force being used to heal people.
1 second, I gotta pause.
Okay. And we're back. We're back.
Hold on, I haven't unpaused yet.
Oh, well, I'm back. And
I unpaused it. Sorry for the interruption. Okay.
we're back. Okay, so this episode also is the first, because it came out just before it, use in film to show the Force healing people.
Yes.
Which is important.
Very important.
As it turns out.
Because it plays a key part in things in this episode.
Yeah.
And other places.
But this episode was just so good. This episode offered kind of a little bit of everything. We got a return to these characters that they had introduced. What was so amazing is that with the exception of Queel, most of these characters we only had one episode with. Mm-hmm. And even Queel, we only had, 2 or 3? And
2.
And so to just all of a sudden, have these characters back and have it feel so much like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy they're back, really made me realize how much I had kind of grown to care about them. It takes a little time. Again, this goes back to, I think the show is better when they have time, and these episodes run longer, and it's kind of a two-parter.
Yeah.
It's not fully, because it's a little different between this one and the next one, but at the same time, like, they have time to show the reprogramming of IG-11. They don't just make that just a statement of I reprogrammed him.
And not only just the reprogramming, but like the literal, birth to now.
Yeah. And it's a really touching thing to get to see for that character and to see the way Queel cares about it. And unfortunately, it's also the end of our time with Queel.
Yeah, which is such a bummer.
Yeah. This episode, because of Rise of Skywalker, came out early, which meant it was even longer of a wait between this and the next one. And the amount of feedback I got of, oh my gosh, how can they end it there? What are they doing? How am I going to wait a week? Like, people were really upset by this. And
yeah.
What a downer. You see, like, Queel's death is just so powerful. And it's powerful in a way that, like, it doesn't do any of the tropes that you expect from a Star Wars movie. There's no dramatic swell of music and someone yelling, no, or anything like that. It actually shows it to you in such a disjointed way that it's jarring and upsetting, because you think Queel has made it to the ship because he was so close.
Yeah.
And then they just cut to Baby Yoda laying on the ground and the speeder bike pulling up and taking him. And you're just like, well, wait a minute. How did that happen? And the camera starts the pan, and in the time it takes for the pan to arrive and tell you that Queel didn't make it, your brain puts together, oh, he didn't make it. And you arrive at it at exactly the same moment that the camera shows it to you, and it's just like, oh God, what a rough end to a character I like so much.
Exactly. But because of that because they didn't have the, the swelling music and everything going with it. I think it was actually the way that it was filmed was so much more powerful than if they had a him riding along and then, getting shot in the back and falling down and reaching before he gets shot one more time or something like that. It's just getting there with just the unknown of what the hell is going on, to just that camera pan was just so moving for me.
Yeah. Now, there is something to be said about how powerful and rough that ending is, and the way the next episode begins.
Oh, the beginning of the next. Well, first of all, are we done talking about chapter 7?
Yeah, I think I was done talking about chapter 7.
I mean, we can't say anything more than it's probably the best episode.
I think it's the second best, but...
Well, I mean, that we've talked about so far.
Oh, yes. Then yes. I agree. Which
now let's
I guess
talk about
spoils what I think is the best
episode. No, I agree with you. Definitely.
All right, chapter 8, Redemption, directed by Taika Waititi, and...
Oh, wait, he directed this episode?
Yes, he did.
Oh my god, no wonder it's the best.
And written by Jon Favreau.
That makes the beginning so much more understandable on why it was there.
Yeah, makes the beginning really make sense. The beginning of this episode is basically a canonical version of the old Star Wars fan film Troops.
Yeah.
In which the two scout troopers who just gunned down Queel, and this is why I say that, like, I don't know how history will look at Queel's death, because on one hand you have this tragic, awful murder of a beloved character, and then an episode later we're watching them try and shoot and miss a thing over and over again with their blasters.
Which one thing, just throwing back really quick on chapter 6, when boss dude's all like, oh yeah, he used to be an Imperial sharpshooter. Mando's like, oh yeah, that's great. He's like, I wasn't a stormtrooper. Good line. Anyway, sorry, going back, but yeah, they're trying to shoot like essentially a can that's like 5 feet from them.
Yeah, it's this weird little like just power thing sticking out of the ground. It's not far away. They're not even moving. They're just sitting there, and they just fire shot after shot and just miss. It's a wonderful and funny opening scene. Again, it definitely does take a little bit away from Queel's death if you watch it back to back, but it's so funny that I think it's worth it. It's just the joy of a scene. Baby Yoda gets punched 3 times, which is incredibly disturbing. I don't mean to say it like it's the greatest thing ever, but this show has made many memes. And, there's people who, when people get excited and they start doing memes, rebel against it and want to therefore think it's the worst thing ever because they're counterculture people. And it's okay. We need to have counterculture people. But what I do love is that by having a character punch Baby Yoda in the head multiple times, they have now created the anti-Baby Yoda memes, and the show now has everybody on board. So they've really achieved maximum memes, is what I'm saying.
I gotta say, though, just the dialogue of them waiting was amazing. Just, okay, should we come in? It's like, well, hold on, let me double check. Waiting a little bit. How's that double check going? Well, a lot of people want to talk to Moff Gideon. There's a big line. I don't think he wants to be interrupted, so...
yeah, he killed a guy for interrupting.
It's going to be a little while.
He's very upset. Yeah, it was good.
He's like, wait, did he just say he killed it? His own man?
Yeah. Well, you know how they are. These guys come into town. They want to establish that they're in charge. They want to... The fact that stormtroopers have this casual understanding that they get killed by their higher-ups just to make a point is really funny.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, moving past that. We've left the Mando bunch in a very dire situation.
Yeah, and it gets more dire. I think maybe one of the only things that I was not 100% clear on was I was not sure why Gideon was waiting. I guess they hadn't told him that they had acquired the child.
Yeah, they never did.
They never got word to him, but that he was sitting, that he decides to set up an E-web cannon. And it was just like, just send your people in there. Like, you've already, like, killed your own people for no good reason. I just felt like he was showing off, but, you know, maybe that's in his nature and that's in his character, so that's fine. But, yeah, he sets up a cannon. They were already in a bad spot. Now they're in a worse spot. They're trying to find a way out, and he gives them till sunset, which, hey, Mandalorian, thank you for using sunset as a metric of time instead of
Yes.
hours, which in a freaking franchise where you're going from planet to planet doesn't mean a damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But fun story when IG-11 shows up with the child. It's like, oh well, now we have all our eggs in one basket. Okay.
Yeah, IG-11's ride through town murdering people is
So good.
great. The look on Baby Yoda's face is also great.
He's having so much fun. He's living his best life at that point.
Yep. Baby Yoda, we didn't talk about it. The full-on force chokes Kara
That's right.
in the previous episode.
Yeah, because she's maybe winning in an arm wrestling match against the Mando. Oh man.
This show's so good. Oh, this show's so good.
So fighting does ensue. It gets to a point where it's basically Gideon and Mando. They're about to face off, and then Gideon does the smart thing and uses the environment to try to get a kill on Mando.
And he nearly does. Mando nearly dying. Everybody else running. IG-11's the only one who stayed behind. He wants to administer aid, but it's going to require the removal of the helmet, which also, friggin' kudos to Mandalorian for sticking to its guns about the helmet thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In a world where Spider-Man, who the most important thing is to keep your secret identity, can't go 10 seconds without removing his friggin' hat or mask constantly.
No, I picture the Spider-Man in just a baseball hat.
Yep. He just removes it all the time because we have to be reminded that it's Tom Holland or Tobey Maguire or the other guy in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just constant. Like, oh, I'm perched on a building. I better take my mask off. Oh, I'm having a hard time. I should take my mask off. Kudos. Yeah. And guess what? It worked. It worked fine.
Yeah. Did you see that even in the cast photo, he kept his bucket on?
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah, when it was just like, I don't know if it was a wrapping picture or something like that, but had the whole cast just standing there, and he's standing there with his helmet on the whole time.
That's amazing. Yeah, but so this is the moment. They remove the helmet. He makes a big deal out of it. There's a very
talk about his past.
There's a very touching moment where he says, "No living thing can see me without this on," and IG-11 says, "I'm not a living thing," and you're like, "Oh, but you got so much heart."
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if he gave his backstory before that part.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, which I mean, you find out why he hates droids.
Yep,
and you realize that this kid has grown up to be everything that he is because the Clone Wars happened. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. Well, I mean, not for him, but it's just it shows that it tied into the rest of this whole universe saga that's going on. This is just the tiniest little microcosm of the effects of everything that happened, and it doesn't dwell in it either, which is the best part of it.
Yeah,
but yeah, I love how you learn a lot about the Mando culture at that point. About, I mean, you could have an idea of what a foundling was beforehand, but I mean, this really just ties into it. I mean, they flat out say Mandalorian isn't like a race or a species; it's a culture.
Yeah,
And again, it goes back to the stuff that I absolutely loved from those books, and it just made me squeak because I'm like, this is the stuff that I love about this. So I was really happy with that.
Yeah, it's good. And when he takes the helmet off, like, it is a reveal. But at the same time, as much of it as is a reveal, it's also, he looks like Pedro Pascal, who we know what he looks like.
Knew was in there.
It turns out he looks like him.
Yeah.
And that's what he looks like.
Okay, so you want to know what's really funny? Like, that didn't take me out at all. Like, it's the Viper. I know who he is, everything like that. But to me, his face is not important at all because he's the Mandalorian. He wears the helmet and everything. And yeah, you see his face, but I don't know. It goes into the whole idea that Spider-Man can be anybody, I guess. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, that's what he looks like. Whatever. That's not who he is.
Right. But I am happy it's Pedro Pascal because I
me
like
too.
That dude a lot. That dude's great.
Oh my God. Have you seen any of the stuff that's been going around lately about just his joy of being the Mandalorian?
Yeah, he's great. He's the best.
Oh, so amazing.
I'm glad he's doing this stuff. Also, worth noting, another big reveal that we got from this. He has a name. He's not called the Mandalorian or Mando. Well, he's probably still going to be, but a few people know him by his actual name, which is Din Djarin. And
that's a Star Wars name.
That is a Star Wars name. And also revealed that Cara Dune was a native of Alderaan.
Yeah, which that's a pretty big deal too.
Yeah, it completely explains why, when he was getting this little group together, he was like, hey, we're going up against the Empire. And she was just like, I'm in, right after saying that she wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
It was like, at the time you hear that and you're like, okay, I see what you're doing. You want me to know that she hates Imperials. But now they've clarified why she hates Imperials. And it's like, oh, wow, that makes sense.
Really big reason.
I get it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, so we get into the magma, first we get into the sewers, and it comes to one of my favorite parts of the entire episode is, we talk about, well, this is what happened to the Mandalorians there and everything. The blacksmith, the armorer is, taking off scraps in pieces of armor and everything, and just, it's moving on. This is the way, this is the literal, this is the way, this is just what we do. And, she talks to them. He gets a signet, or a sigil, which is pretty cool. Especially when she's like, that was your enemy? What the hell? And then we get a little tiny bit of Jedi lore drop, which was cool. Especially since they're all like, what the hell is going on with this thing? Which finally plays into the whole, Luke not knowing what the Force is or what Jedi were and stuff. Because, like, that's one of the biggest parts that I've had an issue with all of Star Wars is that they were everywhere. And then, like, 20 years later, everyone's like, oh, no, I don't even know what it is anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's always been a weird discrepancy there. There's always been a weird discrepancy about Obi-Wan being called an old fossil. Turns out time is not as much time as we all thought.
No.
Maybe when George Lucas was a young man thinking of this, he was like, ugh, he's going to be like 43.
Exactly.
And then we all got older and we're like, 43 is not, you could be older.
But anyway, so after that, she sends them on their way and everything. And then her fight scene was so badass.
Chunks of armor going everywhere.
Yeah, you know how hard you have to hit a stormtrooper for that to happen?
At least as hard as an Ewok.
Harder. Because I didn't see chunks of armor flying off.
That's true. You got to be slightly stronger than an Ewok.
Yeah. Oh, that was really awesome. Seeing an R2 completely modded out with like legs and arms was cool.
Okay, this is what I thought you were going to talk about because I know how much you like R2 units, and I wanted to find out if this was a figure, would this find its way into your collection?
Oh yeah, it's unique compared to all the other ones I have.
Because
Like,
there's also something incredibly upsetting about it.
oh, so much so. And the fact that the head is even like detached and raised up a little bit from the body is like the even weirder part of it. But if you look, like the arms are in the spot where the legs go in, and then it still has the same main chassis just bolted on the legs. It's just so unique looking, and I really like
And
it.
it's a freaking boatman in a river of lava. Like it looks like the friggin' boatman for droid hell. Like
Yes.
it's just the most terrifying thing.
Yeah, you put two credit chits underneath the cameras, when a droid dies, and then you send it to droid
Oh
hell.
my gosh, that thing was a nightmare.
Oh, it was fantastic, and I love that it's still just happily chirping to itself as it's going down the molten river.
That thing was terrifying. Oh, I
Yeah, I mean
loved it.
the sound effects from the movements sounded like the droid movements from C-3PO and stuff. I'm just like, oh, this thing's great. I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, and then we get our Terminator 2 ending.
I'm so glad that you feel the same way.
Oh, it's totally. You can't help but think of Terminator 2, but only because Terminator 2 was, there's a beauty to it, and there's a beauty to IG-11's sacrifice. I mean, he looks badass. He climbs down into a friggin' river of lava, starts to short circuit, and makes his way out there and blows everybody up. And it's an awesome moment for this droid. And even bigger moment for the Mandalorian as he puts his hate of droids behind him, and through his voice conveys that he cared about one at least.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that's great about it is the fact that, I mean, it was a fun character to begin with in that first episode, but then all of a sudden this happens and it's like emotional, and it's like, what the crap? And well, first of all, we didn't really talk about it either, but IG-11 with the baby Bjorn with baby Yoda in it was amazing. But going back to it though, just like this moment was great. He knew his purpose. He knew what he had to do, and like making instead of just blowing up so that people can't get pieces of them, turning into a self-sacrifice moment. Like this was, sorry for the Rise of Skywalker spoilers, but this was more meaningful than C-3PO losing his memory.
Oh, yeah.
And-
Well, for
and
one, it lasted.
Well, yeah, that. But I mean, it was like it hit me. I mean, I didn't tear up or cry for this, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh, he's gonna blow himself up. This sucks. This is amazing though. So like it totally worked, and I really loved that part of the episode.
Yeah, and then we have a final showdown between Gideon and the Mandalorian, who now has a jetpack.
Which was cool.
He's now gone the full Boba Fett. He's got it all. He's ready to go. That's amazing. He defeats the TIE fighter. It crashes off in the distance, which was almost a guarantee that he was going to still be alive.
Yeah, oh, of course. But yeah, they find out that Carl Weathers stays on the planet with I can't remember her name because I'm really
Cara
tired.
Dune.
Cara Dune, also a very Star Warsy name.
Yeah, they did good on their Star Wars names.
Exactly. So they end up staying there and stuff, which who knows if that's going to play into season 2. The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda leave off in the attempts to potentially find his people.
And the final reveal of the whole thing wasn't just that Moff Gideon survived, which
No.
when I realized they were going to do a like end of thing reveal, I was like, oh, is it just going to be that he lived? And then all of a sudden I hear and I see a blade cutting through the side. I was like, why has he got a lightsaber? And then I saw the lightsaber and I was like, he has the dark saber?
And then it's like, what? And my head exploded.
Yeah.
If you don't know anything about the dark saber, I'm sorry.
Then you haven't watched the animated shows, and you should watch them. They're all on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
and now that the Mandalorian's off for a while, you got plenty of time. Go ahead and Google yourself the watch order of Clone Wars and get started.
Yeah, and I got it. Well, Clone Wars and Rebels, because it plays a big part into Rebels.
Yes,
too.
but I mean, start with Clone Wars. That's
Yeah.
where it begins, and they all connect to one another.
Yeah,
And-
and understand also that You might not like the beginning of Clone Wars. You might not like the beginning of Rebels, because they are kind of very much aimed at kids. But holy hell, dude, they get good.
They grow up real quick, though.
Oh yeah, very much so. Um, but yeah, so overall, Mandalorian is must see. It's amazing stuff, and it's, in my opinion, some of the best Star Wars that's come out ever.
Yeah, it really, really is. It's doing things that are different. It's doing things that are familiar. Like it's firing on all cylinders now. There is something unfair about comparing and doing a comparison between a show and a movie because a movie has to stay consistent. They don't get the benefit of saying, "Well, this episode we're going to do this and do something really
Exactly.
wild." But at the same time, like, this just scratched so many itches for things I wanted from Star Wars, and it did it so incredibly well. And there's also an element, and I guess just my closing thoughts on The Mandalorian is I'm the kid who my favorite toys were Boba Fett and IG-88. Like,
So you're just a touch biased.
like, that's all you really need to know how I was gonna feel about this. Those were the characters, those were the toys that I was always drawn to, was Boba Fett and IG-88, and I thought they were great. I ended up with like 3 IG-88 toys. One had a bunch of soap in all his joints because bathtub adventures. I don't know exactly what happened.
Oh no.
But anyway, those were the toys that I had and played with growing up, and seeing these characters come together and get attention, not that it's IG-88 or Boba Fett, but you know, it feels like those toys coming to life in a lot of ways for me. And that was just, it was just incredible. It really was like watching childhood things that I used to play with and mess with just come to life and exist, and it was magical on top of just being extremely entertaining.
Yeah. Gosh, I gave my whole spiel about how much I love the Mandalorian culture and everything like that, and seeing it on screen and everything. Like, if they had spoken Mandoa, I probably would have been like, that's peak all I could take. But I mean, just the culture that was represented, the way that the story was told, just the stuff that they've done. It is. Didn't even think about it before, but it's right as of right now. It might be my favorite TV series, but I mean, it's not over, so I can't really say that, But
Right.
for the time being, it's definitely something that I think about a lot. That I just keep wanting to rewatch, which is really easy to do. I'm happy that my sister doesn't have Disney Plus, so I can go over there and say, "Hey, we're watching more Mandalorian," and she's perfectly fine with that. And yeah, it's good. It's great. In fact, I hope that they kind of stick with this formula and stay away from mainstream Jedi Sith stuff.
Yeah, I think they will. I think I think they've got the right creatives behind it. Certainly a big bunch of talent, which is why I wanted to shout out the writers and the directors,
Hmm.
because they definitely assembled quite a crew for this. All the actors were great, and yeah, just a big love letter to Star Wars, and it felt like it, and I loved everything about it.
There you go. Well, if you love everything about us, talking about stuff, but
Okay.
you also love World of Warcraft, check out other episodes of the show if this is the first one you've ever listened to, because, hey, we normally don't talk about Star Wars all the time. But if you're looking for that, you can find it on AzerothRoundtable.com, also on iTunes, Spotify, a whole bunch of other places. If you have any questions, comments, want to tell us your take on everything, you can always email us at AzerothRoundtable@gmail.com. And of course, don't forget our Twitter. I totally forgot to tweet that we weren't live this week until like we started recording this, but whatever. You can check us out. We are at AzerothRT. John, if people are looking for you specifically, though, what's the best place?
Oh, hey, if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Twitter at John_Jagger. I will let you know where I am. and what I'm up to. If you want to catch me doing shows, the shows that I do, you can also catch me talking about video games on Core.
Core.
And you can catch me playing There Will Be Dungeons, which is Dungeons and Dragons. I should have flipped that. But, playing Dungeons and Dragons on There Will Be Dungeons, which is a D&D podcast I do where we play D&D. And there's been a little off and on some of those shows with the holiday schedules, but we're kicking things back up. Should be going back to weekly on all that content, as well as weekly for WoW content for this show for the foreseeable future here. We typically only talk about Star Wars once a year. That might end up being true this year, though. Even though we did two back to back, I don't know if there's a Star Wars December. So
there is. It's called Mandalorian Season 2. It's coming out at the fall of 2020.
All right, we usually do it twice a year, starting this year.
We'll see what happens. If you're looking for me, though, you can always find me on Twitter. I am at Ben Bumhofer. If you like the Dungeons and Dragons, you can always check out my D&D show where we play. It's called +5 to Hit. We've also been taking a little bit of time off for the holiday season, and because everybody on the show is really busy with work right now for some reason. Also, I do a show about Dungeons and Dragons with Ryan Reeder. It is called D&D Discussions. That's DND Discussions.
Clear as mud, yeah, man. You
exactly. But you can check that out. We talk about various things from creating campaign stuff, looking at things through players' eyes, stuff like that. And then, of course, last but not least, I do a show with Eludra called Box Fort, where we geek out about whatever we want. So it could be anything. You never know.
Yep, that's right. Hey.
Hey. Hey, John.
Hi. Hey, we're at the end of the show here where I give a special thank you to people who support our show. They go to patreon.com/AzerothRT and they help us out by becoming patrons. We got a new patron want to thank. I'm going to say Michael V. I usually just do the first letter of the last name, but this is one of those where it's kind of got two and I didn't know what to do, so I'm going to just call you Michael V. If you want me to call you something else, I will. But we also thank the Murloc Club for their going above and beyond. So a thank you to Aaron, Blixie the Rogue, Brandon O, Caleb M, Kilroy Tastic, Sarah M, and Taryn. Thank you so much for being part of the Murloc Club.
Yeah. So we're getting back to our normal World of Warcraft talk next week. We're going to have Manny back on and talk about some really cool WoW stuff before the patch hits. Because, John, the new patch is coming a week from Tuesday.
Wow.
Kind of weird, right? So until then, everybody, thank you very much for listening and, kind of slumming it with us on Grand Moff Talkin. And until next time.
That's what it's called.
I should actually put it as an episode title so that people will think twice if they want to make a Star Wars podcast.
It works. There's a Moff in this. He's not a Grand Moff, but there's a Moff.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's time to really claim this title because, man, it's too good of a title. We can't let anybody else have it.
Grand Moff Talkin. With an apostrophe?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So anyways, until next time when we're back on World of Warcraft, everybody, be good to each other.
And may the Force be with you, but in a Mandalorian... Wait, hold on. We'll just switch it. This is the way.
Yeah, may the Force be switched to. This is the way.
This is the way.
I have spoken. That's where it stops.